It is time to breathe again on the latest breath of fresh air webcast streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So, hello, y'all. I am Charles Taylor, and I am by myself for this one. Patrick Brackett could not make this episode, but he will be back next week. So, with that being said, let's jump right into these topics. Um, we'll start with college football and what we saw from last week's action, and then we'll preview some of the games for this week. Uh, Last week was a pretty good day for the Pac 12 conference. They had two very solid wins. We'll start with the Washington Huskies, who just blew out the Michigan State Spartans. 39-28 was that final score, but the game was not that close. Washington was up like over 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Michigan State got a couple of garbage touchdowns to make it respectable. But Washington looked good, and so did the Oregon Ducks, who beat BYU 41-20. Now, a lot of people forgot after Oregon got completely dump trucked by Georgia 49-3 in the first week of the season. People forgot Oregon played football. No one's talking about Oregon anymore. And now here they are, riding the ship a little bit, having a good solid win over BYU and setting them up for a competitive Pac-12 season. Between them and Washington, they'll play each other because they're in the same division. And of course, Utah is still there, and a lot of people want to talk about USC. I know USC is a top 10 team, but we'll hold off and see what they do. They have a tough game coming up against Oregon State, actually. More on that in a minute. But looking back through the rest of the schedule, so you had Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. They all have blowout wins over inferior opponents. Penn State had a solid win when you look at the comparison to the conferences. They went down to Auburn and beat Auburn 41-12 down there on the plains in Alabama. Auburn is in trouble. That is a mess of a situation, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Brian Hartson become a head coaching casualty. He'll be losing his job. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened halfway during the season. It may happen at the end of the season, who knows? But I don't see him lasting too much longer. And that would be the third Power Five conference coach that I know of that has gotten fired. Scott Frost got released from Nebraska last week. Herm Edwards got released from Arizona State. Both of those tendencies, both of those coaching terms began with a lot of promise, but they just never panned out. And both of those guys are gone. They're not on the job anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Brian Hartson be the next one to go. Other games, I mean, it was mostly blowouts for the top 10 teams. Let's see. I mean, Tennessee had a blowout win. They're ranked number 11, and they'll have a big game coming up this week too. Texas, my team. I was wondering how we were going to do when it came to coming into this game against UTSA. Everybody knows they had the game with Alabama. A lot got put into that game. We lost 20-19. I say we because I'm a fan of the Longhorns, just in case you didn't know. But we lost 20-19. And I was wondering how this game would get handled because it's between the game with Alabama and then you're going into the Big 12 conference season next week or this upcoming week. They did pretty good. They started off slow in the first half, but they ended up winning that 41-20 and pulled away at the end. Looked like they got stronger at the end. So it'll be interesting to see how everything starts to pan out as we get into conference football season. And NC State, solid win over Texas Tech. Other than that, everything else was it was a blowout. I'll talk more about the Miami Texas A&M game. A&M won that game 17-9. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But really, I mean, besides Florida and Arkansas having scares at home, everyone else just kind of took care of business. So there's really not too much to dive into because there wasn't a whole bunch of upsets going on. We'll mention College Game Day last week. They were in Boone, North Carolina, so that's where Appalachian State plays. I think it's the first time that they came there, and that was an electric atmosphere. I got to catch the last hour of College Game Day, and then Appalachian State had a Hail Mary win over Troy to top off that weekend. So it is just party central right now in Boone, North Carolina, which is close to Asheville. For those of y'all who aren't familiar with that location, it's a beautiful area in the Appalachian Mountains. If you get to go through there, check it out. It's really picturesque to go through there. Let's look forward to some of the games coming up next week. So you got Florida and Tennessee. So that looks to be the game of the weekend. It's there's actually three games that feature top 25 teams in it. But Florida and Tennessee is a big game in the SEC East, and it will tell a lot about who can compete with Georgia or who might be the team that could potentially challenge Georgia in that division, along with Kentucky. Kentucky looks strong too. Arkansas and Texas A&M, that's an interesting game, of course. Arkansas right now undefeated. Texas A&M has the one loss to Appalachian State. I believe that game is actually here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Jerry World over there in Arlington. And then you have Clemson and Wake Forest. That could be a game where with the Wake Forest, they can score some points. Clemson's going to have to be careful there. And then you have the conference season starting in the Big 12. Baylor goes to Iowa State. Texas goes to Texas Tech. Oklahoma has Kansas State coming in. And then the USC Oregon State game is coming up too. Oregon State can score some points. USC has to be careful. That game is in Corvallis. And other than that, I mean, nothing too big. None of the big matchups including or involving like top 10 teams, but some solid matchups there. And you know how it is with these weekends. There's probably going to be an upset or two that comes through. But it's always fun just to watch college football, see how these games materialize. And as we get more and more into the conference games, Ohio State has one with Wisconsin coming up too. Michigan has Maryland coming in the Big Ten conference. So always good watching. So I just say enjoy the games, and then we'll just watch it together and see what happens if there are some big upsets that spring away. It's always a possibility, of course. Real quick on the Miami Texas A&M game from last week. So a lot of people are always trying to hype up Miami. We know that. You look at these media channels, everybody is looking to have Miami get back to prominence. There's a few teams. I know our school is one of them, Texas is one of them, USC is another, and Miami is another one as well. Miami had a chance. They went down to College Station to play A&M, and they lost 17-9. But Miami, once again, just proved they're just not ready for the stage yet. They're not. Now, could they get there? Possibly. They'll have Mario Cristobal there, and I think he's trying to get that identity to where the team is more disciplined, more fundamentally sound, and maybe they will start to turn the corner sometime later on this year. I don't expect them to challenge for the ACC title. I think there are just a lot of teams that are better than them right now. Clemson, to me, is better. NC State is better. North Carolina can score a lot of points. Their defense is left to be desired, and the same is true for Wake Forest. But I mean, Miami, look, for the expectations, I know people want them to be really, really high. They want to see the days of the U when they were competing for national titles. They're just not there yet. And this game in College Station proved it. They had many opportunities to do something, and they just did not walk through the door. When you are ready for those opportunities, that you're able to take advantage of those opportunities and make the other team pay for keeping you in the game if they can't put you away. Miami's just not there yet. So if they are able to get 9, maybe 10 wins, that's a successful season for Miami, especially with Mario Cristobal being in his first year coaching. That's a successful season. It's not national championship consideration, probably not even conference championship consideration. I know, but you the expectations there, they're not at that championship level yet. That's my whole point with Miami. They're not there yet, and it might be a little while before they get there. They haven't been there for a while, so give it some time. Be patient. It's gonna take at least a year, maybe two, for Miami to get back to that level where they can compete, because you're going to get fresh recruiting classes. Cristobal, very familiar with the Miami area. We know Miami and the state of Florida, very, very rich in talent. So they'll be able to get players there. It's just a matter, like what we said about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. Can you coach them when you get them? If you can't coach them when you get there, all the recruiting classes in the world, they don't matter. They make no difference if you can't have that talent produced on the field, and that takes the coaching to get there. So I believe Cristobal is a good coach, and he's going to get Miami maybe close. I don't know how close to a national championship, but all I'm saying is, to the people in the Coral Gables, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area who wants to see the U come back, give it some time. It's not there yet, and I think there will be a couple more losses on top of the one that they just had, the A&M. Uh, just give it some time. Be patient. It would be an absolute miracle. They would be a year or two early if they are somehow able to compete for an ACC championship. Everything is still on the table. Nothing's off the table. And Miami, I think since it was a loss to A&M, it's a non-conference loss. So they're still undefeated in the conference. I don't think they played any conference games yet. No, they haven't. They played Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss, and then they played A&M. So they have yet to get into the conference season yet. But all I'm saying is, be patient with Miami if you think they could get back there. Don't think it's happening this year, though. Let's move on to the NFL, and let's do a review of that schedule. So you had some it was comeback week. We'll put it that way with the NFL. You had teams coming back. The Miami Dolphins and the Arizona Cardinals came back from down 20 or more points to win their games against the Baltimore Ravens and Las Vegas Raiders, respectively. And then the Jets, came back and beat the Cleveland Browns. They were down by 13 points late in that game, and they were able to come back and take the game. They won 31-30. Other games that stick out: the Chiefs, they beat the Chargers. Look, the LA Chargers, it's the same story. They were looking good in that game, that Thursday night game, the first game that's been broadcast on Amazon, with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit doing the commentary. Ooh, excuse me, sorry about that. But the Chargers, they had control of the game. This is the story with the Chargers. I'm not going to get too far into the particulars of it, because it's the same story with the LA Chargers. They look good. They look like a team that are ready to take that next step. And then when the opportunity is there, they just don't do it. Simply put, they just don't do it. They drop interceptions. They have crazy penalties. And you can only give a team like the Chiefs so many opportunities without having them come back to bite you in the ass. Pardon my French. But the Chiefs win that game 27-24. And once again, the Chargers are sitting there 1-1. And they're, again, right now looking like that team that's a year away from being 2 years away from competing. But we'll see. The Chargers have a lot of talent, but they just, none of that talent pays off to where they can make a legit run at the championship. Keep on hearing about how great Justin Herbert is, but the fact still remains. Justin Herbert has never been in the playoffs yet. He's been in the league for 2 years, has not been in the playoffs yet. Let's let him get to the playoffs before we start putting them up there with the best ever quarterbacks. But Chiefs still doing their thing, and they're going to be a force to be messed with going forward. The Buffalo Bills looked very, very good on Monday night, destroying the Tennessee Titans 41-7. And the Philadelphia Eagles had a great win over the Minnesota Vikings 24-7. Same story with the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins, oh, go figure, another primetime game, another dud. So that's what you get with Kirk Cousins. um, the Cowboys, I'll go ahead and show some love to the Cowboys. I did not think they were going to beat the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, but they were able to pull that game out 20-17. And now people are happy and they're all excited. Oh my gosh, they were able to beat Cincinnati with Cooper Rush. Just imagine what will happen when they get Dak Prescott back. Well, the answer to that is nothing. Nothing's going to happen. Dallas is still going to be an average team. They're not going to do anything. Sorry to bust the bubble there, Cowboys fans. But I am coming to you, being here in Dallas, Fort Worth, I am coming to you saying, very good win. Credit for the win. The Lions got a win over the Commanders. The Lions look like they can do some things. Now, I don't know how that's going to show up in the record books. I think the over-under was 6.5 in terms of wins they could have for the season. But the Lions have been competing. They competed in a lot of the games last year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see over on that number. They look like they can actually score. They're going to scrap. They're going to fight. And if you're going to play against them, you're gonna have to play some ball to get rid of them. And how about the New York Giants? They're actually undefeated. That's crazy, right? The New York Giants undefeated, but they beat the Carolina Panthers 19-16. And they're sitting at 2-0 on top of their division right now, on top of the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles, who are also 2-0. And then, I mentioned the Cardinals coming back against the Raiders. Terrible loss for the Raiders there. Terrible. And same thing for the Ravens against Dolphins. Terrible loss right there as well. Looking forward, we have let's see what games. There's some interesting games here. You got the Ravens and Patriots, the Bills and Dolphins. That could be a shootout down there in Miami. The Chiefs and the Colts. We'll talk about the Colts in a little bit. You also have the Packers and Buccaneers playing. 49ers are playing the Broncos on Sunday night. The Cowboys and Giants, they're the Monday night game. So some fun games to look at. The Raiders and Titans, that's the desperation bowl. If you start off 0-3, both of those teams have some expectations there, but you're not trying to start the season 0-3. That's a hell of a hole to have to come back from. And then the Jaguars and Chargers can be interesting too. We have to keep an eye. I know Justin Herbert, he had some a rib. I think he has a fractured rib. So we'll see if he comes back and play. I know the status was day to day, but the Jags, that was another game that I forgot to mention. They blew out the Indianapolis Colts 24-0. That's actually pretty funny that happened to the Colts, and they just cannot win in Jacksonville. They haven't won in Jacksonville in years now. So I don't know if it's something in the water when they go down to Jacksonville, or if it's just a matter of them saying, well, we feel like we're better than the Jags anyway. We could just show up on the field and we're going to win. Apparently that's not happening, and that's a mess there in Indianapolis. More on that in a minute, but let's get to the San Francisco 49ers. So that is my favorite NFL team. And of course, I want to talk about them because the young quarterback that was drafted by them last year, Trey Lance, he's out. He's gone for the year. Had a broken ankle and a ligament tear. Had the surgery on it yesterday. And Jimmy Garoppolo is back being the starter. We know how much of a story it was to see what the 49ers were going to do with Jimmy Garoppolo. They decided to restructure his deals for another season. He's making significantly less money than he was before the restructure. But, I mean, they had the plan for him to be the backup QB. So, hey, go ahead. He's made a lot of money. He had a very sizable contract when he first came to the 49ers. So they restructured it. He's going to go away or test out free agency next year or at the end of this year. And we'll see where he ends up going. But for now, he's the man again. Look, I feel like this with the 49ers. They were going to be okay regardless. And you can ask Patrick and anybody else who has talked to me. I have been consistent in saying the 49ers will be fine regardless of who's playing quarterback, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it's Trey Lance. You want to see what you have in the future with Trey Lance. I get he hasn't played a lot of football, really. Didn't play at all during his last year in college. He played the one showcase game, and that was it for the college career. And then he played in 2 games in the regular season. I think one of those games was against the Arizona Cardinals, and the other one was against the Houston Texans. It was the second to last game of the season, with Jimmy Garoppolo being injured, so he couldn't make the starts of those games. But the 49ers have a good system in place. They have a very good defense, a strong running game. They have people that can do stuff with the ball in their hands once they get the ball in their hands. Guys like Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings is a good receiver. The running backs, they have Jeff Wilson playing right now because Elijah Mitchell has been hurt. Well, he got hurt in week 1 in Chicago, so he'll be out for the next couple of months. He should be back in November sometime. And then you have George Kittle at tight end, and he hasn't even played yet. He's been nursing a growing injury. So hopefully he can come back next week when the 49ers go to Denver for Sunday Night Football. But again, it's Jimmy's team now, and let's take the keys. We have to remember this about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not that quarterback that you're going to put up there with the elite guys, but you can win a bunch of games with them. Hell, the 49ers went to a Super Bowl with him, and last year they were in the NFC Championship game. It wasn't pretty. I know. I get it. It's not like Jimmy Garoppolo was setting the world on fire with his stats, but you can win with the guy. He's a guy. He's very familiar with the offense. So when he came in there, it was like they didn't miss a beat. They could come and they could bring him in. He's in the system. He's been in the system. So you could just call the plays the way you were calling it. So again, I'm not really trying to get in the whole battle. I mean, if Trey Lance needs a little bit of work, then okay, cool. Then he needs a little bit of work. But you can win with both of those guys in there because the system is good. The 49ers have a team ready to win right now. And as long as you get solid quarterback play, you're going to need that play to really step up in the playoffs. So those guys are going to have to be able to make winning throws to elevate the team and get them to that championship hoist in the Super Bowl level. Jimmy Garoppolo, he missed some throws. Remember what happened in that Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. He missed some throws at the end. But again, me personally, I blame that more on the coaching, because if you have a 10-point lead, you need to run the football. You need to be able to control the clock and run that clock out. Don't give Patrick Mahomes any more chances than what is necessary, especially if your strength is running the football anyway. I don't know why Kyle Shanahan called it the way he did, but that kind of set the 49ers up for failure there in the most crucial moment. And then I got to the NFC Championship game, and you made a run through the wild card round. Well, I guess, okay, this year, or the way the playoffs are set up, of course, only the top team gets a bye to the divisional playoff round. The 49ers went to Dallas, beat the Cowboys. They went up to Green Bay in a snowstorm and beat the Packers, and probably should have beat the LA Rams in the NFC Championship game. But the Rams came back, credit to them. But they'll be fine. 49ers are good. Garoppolo's in there. Whoever's the backup QB, maybe he needs to be ready as well, because we know Garoppolo can miss a few games here and there. So let's just make sure, keep everything going, keep everything rolling. The 49ers are still a threat to do something. And I feel like that would have been the case with Trey Lance anyway. Meanwhile, in Indianapolis, oh my goodness. So the Colts have had a very, very good beginning to the season, and when I say very, very good, I mean very, very bad. They should have lost to the Houston Texans in Houston. They were able to come back, get that game in overtime, and then they missed a field goal that could have won the game for them. The kicker, Rodrigo Blankenship, he got cut because of that missed kick. But my gosh, as I mentioned earlier, they went to Jacksonville and got the doors blown off of them. They got mercy ruled 24-0. And for the Colts, it's not looking good for them. They see the Kansas City Chiefs next week, and that's looking like an 0-3 start. Do not be surprised if they're not out already. They will be for Frank Reich. Then people will be calling for his job. He, in my opinion, he's an overrated coach. A lot of people say he is good. I don't think he's that good. I continue to go back to last year. You had the playoffs right there in your grasp, and you let those opportunities go away. We pointed out the game in Jacksonville, conveniently from last year, where the team was not ready to play. Carson Wentz, of course, he was the sacrificial lamb. He was the guy, the low-hanging fruit that everybody picked on. But here you are, you got Matt Ryan in there, and Matt Ryan threw 3 interceptions in the game on Sunday. Did not score a point. They got shut out. You're telling me you went ahead, you did this trade, you got Carson Wentz out of there, you brought up Matt Ryan to do this, to get shut out in Jacksonville, the scene with that massacre they suffered last year. That the Colts are in trouble right now, and it's not like me to say that a team is in trouble after the first 2 weeks. It's a long season. You have 17 games now, so you can get things together. The Colts had a bad start last year to the season, and they were able to get themselves in a position where they could potentially make the playoffs. So that could happen this year, of course. But man, there could be some major changes taking place if it gets too far out of there. I believe the owner, Jim Irsay, is at the point where he's not happy. He's not happy with how things ended last year, and you've had a very, very bad beginning to this year. If things don't get turned around quick, do not be surprised if Frank Reich is out of a job. Some guys, to me, they're just better coordinators than coaches. Just that simple. And I feel like Frank Reich is one of those guys. Very good offensive coordinator. We know what he did under Doug Peterson with the Philadelphia Eagles, winning the Super Bowl a few years ago. And he got the coach job as the head coach, but it's been uneven. They've been alternating playoff berths, basically, and it did hurt that Andrew Luck retired on them. So when you lose a franchise quarterback like that, that is going to set things back a little bit. Because if you have that quarterback and you happen to miss on him, whether that's through a draft pick that went bad or didn't pan out like you thought it would, or if a retirement comes through, that can set the franchise back for years. Now, the Colts have a good roster. Super Bowl caliber roster? I'm not sure about that. I know a lot of people feel that roster is ready to compete for the Super Bowl, but I just look at them as a team that has a few good players. Jonathan Taylor, very good running back. Shaquille Leonard, very good linebacker, one of the best in the game. Quentin Nelson at the guard position, very good offensive lineman, one of the best in the league. But other than that, I wouldn't say that team is ready to compete for a Super Bowl. I don't think that roster is there. And Matt Ryan, at this point in his career, I just don't think he's the guy who's going to put you over the top. And I said, you get rid of Carson Wentz, maybe you gain something in the leadership category, but at some point, you just have to be able to make the plays. And Matt Ryan still looks like a guy, when you look at some of these throws he makes, he still looks like a guy who makes the mistakes that a rookie quarterback would make. He had an interception in the other day against Jacksonville on Sunday where he tried to anticipate a post corner route and he was fooled by the coverage. Now, the pressure got in his face, and it really just looked like he threw the ball up for grabs because of the coverage disguise. It was a cover, like they had your single high free safety there, but they, at the last minute, Jacksonville turned it into a kind of a cover 2 shell, and that safety was right there waiting for that post corner route, and he was able to run under it and intercept it. Those are the mistakes you don't expect Matt Ryan to make, and you felt by getting him in there, those were the mistakes you would avoid. You would expect Carson Wentz to make some mistakes like that, but Matt Ryan, grizzled vet, been in the league for double-digit years. the MVP in the league, you would expect him not to make too many of those mistakes. Right now, that is not the case. And I think unless things get better, there's going to be some major changes happening in Indianapolis. Let's dive into some baseball before we wrap this show up. So, you have a few weeks left in the season, and I know we've been talking about football. Football's back. Everybody's happy that football's back, and I'm one of those guys too. Football is my favorite sport, of course. But baseball is winding down the regular season, and come October is going to be postseason baseball, heading up to the World Series. So, what you have right now with the let's start with the National League. So you have the LA Dodgers. They already have 103 wins this season. So they're running away. They'll when in all practicality, they'll be the number one seed in the National League. And then you have the New York Mets with 94 wins and the St. Louis Cardinals with 87 wins. So those are your division leaders for the National League West, East, and Central, respectively. Now the Mets, they are trying to hold off the Atlanta Braves, who are the defending World Series champs. They have a game lead on them, and the Braves have 2 games up on them, meaning the Mets have played 2 more games than the Braves had. So if the Braves are able to win the 2 games more that they have than the Mets, then that will be a tied division right now, as it stands right now. But right now, the Mets have a game lead on. The Braves have 92 wins. And then the San Diego Padres and the Philadelphia Phillies they round out your wild card teams there. So Atlanta, San Diego, and Philly in that order. Philadelphia has a 2.5 game lead on the Milwaukee Brewers for that final wild card spot. And other than that, everybody is pretty much out of it. The Giants are 10.5 back. The Diamondbacks are 13 back. Colorado 16.5 back, so on and so forth. So it looks like unless Milwaukee can get in there somehow, though the teams who are going to be in the playoffs are pretty set. Besides the Mets, we mentioned the Dodgers and the Cardinals. They have pretty significant leads in their division, and we'll see how those matchups pan out as we get to the end of the season. In the American League, the Houston Astros have ran away. They have 97 wins themselves. They have already clinched. They have won the West already. So they got their spot situated. You have the New York Yankees. They have 88 wins, and then the Cleveland Guardians are winning the Central right now. They have a 4-game lead on the Chicago White Sox, and we'll see if they can hold on there. But we remember the New York Yankees, they had the hot start, and a lot of people were talking about how great they could be. Well, they have fallen off that path, and they have a 5.5 game lead on the Toronto Blue Jays. So remember that lead was around 16 games literally a couple of months ago, and Toronto and Tampa Bay have made the run at them. It looks like the Yankees will be able to hold on, but it's going to come down pretty close. I wouldn't be surprised if that lead got down to 3 games before the season ended, but I think the Yankees will be able to hold on to the division crown. Then your wild cards, they look pretty set there as well. The Toronto Blue Jays, Tampa Bay Rays, and the Seattle Mariners. If the Mariners hold on, that will be the first time since 2001, somewhere around there, that they've been in the playoffs. So that will break a long drought for them. And being here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, being where the Texas Rangers play, I've gotten to see a lot of the Seattle Mariners. They have there's a good young team, solid young talent all over the place. Julio Rodriguez, this dude is going to be a beast. This is his first year being in with the big league team in Seattle, and he is producing. We got a good pitching staff. Seattle has a very good team, and it wouldn't be surprising if one of these wild cards knock the Yankees out. I'm going with the Yankees, and they can knock the Indians. I wanted to call them the Indians, but they're not the Indians anymore. The Cleveland Guardians. But I wouldn't be surprised if these wild cards sneak up and beat somebody. Now, Houston, they're looking pretty strong. It's going to be hard to beat them. But the Yankees, their pitching is a question mark. They started off hot, but they have definitely cooled down coming down the stretch. Garrett Cole's been shaky. You have Luis Severino, who I still don't know if he's back yet. You've been waiting for him to come back. He had a good start, and then he got hurt again. He's been injured, it seems like, for the last 4 or 5 years. And then Nestor Cortez, he hasn't been the same either. So that the lineup for the Yankees, they're going to do what they do. They're either going to hit a lot of home runs or they're going to strike out a lot. It just depends on the situation. But when you have an inconsistent lineup, you're not going to go far. The better pitching you face, the more you're going to struggle there. So that's what we have with baseball, and that will conclude this webcast. If if you have any comments, any feedback for me, feel free to leave those comments. And of course, I would love it if you visit the Breath of Fresh Air YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, and keep the likes coming on the Breath of Fresh Air Facebook page. So until next time, everybody, you'll take care. For those who were able to catch it live, thank you for catching it live. And I just thanks for tuning in. So everybody take care. Like I said, Patrick should be back with me next week. Outside of that, everybody take care, enjoy the games, and we'll see you at the same time next week.